I need to be on camera?
I don't think so. We should be live right now. Let's check whether the links works properly. Yeah. Oh, yeah, I believe so. Look, yeah, I believe we're live. Let me quickly just share the link with our guys. Copy. And let me also share. I believe I'll share it with the guys a bit later. Yeah, just really was. Oh, one sec. Was just speaking today to my people about how good Georgia actually is as a place to live in. Should definitely for everyone that's gonna be watching that, I believe that's definitely a go to visit, amazing place to live in. You know what I just figured out? While we're waiting for everybody, there's no, that fancy music playing around like do 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 do. Yes, yes, that'll be cool. For the yes. Oh, Josh, hey, how's it going?
Good, good. Yourself?
Oh, everything is going pretty good. How is it, in your part of the world?
Is good. I mean, we're kind of segregated from all this craziness in Canada, but we're still
Good
feeling
for
the
you.
effects here for sure.
Let me actually, guys, let me try to record. Oh yeah, recording is actually in progress. So, I believe that, let's wait for some more people, like, for like, around 2 minutes, and then we can, kick everything off. Let's
Sounds
let's do a
great.
quick mic check first, actually. Yeah. Josh, I can hear you pretty well, and I guess from your responses that, you can hear me pretty well as well. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, mic check. Can you hear me loud and clearly?
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Perfect.
Oh, sounds pretty good. Sounds pretty good. Uh, we're kind of like all in different parts of the world at that particular point. I'm in Eastern Europe. Chris is in the UK. Josh is in
Mm.
Canada. It's like a pretty like time zone mess, as I call that.
Yeah, we're widely spread. Although we do have some sunshine in the UK today, which is a rarity. So it's shining in the window. Hopefully, you can see me clearly on screen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, can see pretty good. Yeah. What is the weather over there in Canada, Josh?
Uh, it's uh, it's not that great. We still have like, I guess, Canada. I was reading earlier was one of like the only places in the world that still has like a cold front coming in from like the Arctic. So it's supposed to be spring right now, but it's about -4, -5,
Ouch.
with
Oh wow.
no foreseeable spring in the future in the next couple of weeks. So hopefully it comes eventually, but yeah,
Well,
we're
let's
dealing
let's
with some
hope.
cold weather here. Yeah.
Let's hope them. And I believe that yeah, there are already a lot of people joining us today. Hey everybody. Well, basically, I believe we can actually kick it off slowly, because there are a lot of interesting topics that we can discuss today, and hope that we're all going to be able to discuss them. So basically, welcome everybody to our actually podcast today. Today we're all with cameras except for me. Well, sorry for that one. Still recovering from the surgery, so trying to you know save my energy on saving a little bit of power on actually looking good. So you guys don't need to see that. But yeah, I just hope it's not that bad as I just said. But you never know. I don't as well. So that's pretty good to have both Chris and Josh here today. Let's start with quick intros as we usually do. Chris, let's start with you since, yeah, as we usually have by tradition for the people that don't know you.
Sure. A pleasure to be here. And yeah, thanks, Josh, for joining. And yeah, again, George, thank you for being here despite recovering from an operation and
Thank you.
choosing to join. But yeah, I'm Chris Williams. I'm the CEO of X1 EcoChain. I've now been here, I think, 3 months. Feels like a lifetime. And obviously, I'm tasked to assist with go-to-market strategy and ensure that we have a successful mainnet launch.
That's pretty good. Thank you so much for that one. Josh, let's go with you as well for the people that don't know you as well.
Yeah, thanks very much, and thanks again for letting us join here. And excited to be working with you guys on the Oracle side and on the successful launch of X1 EcoChain. So yeah, I'm Josh. I'm part of the Dia Oracles team. We're a Oracle provider, kind of like a modular Oracle. So I'm sure we'll get into the details there. But yeah, as was mentioned, I'm from Canada. Been in the crypto space for I don't know, 9 years now. So seen a lot in that time. How things
You're a
have evolved and
dinosaur.
changed, and yeah, it feels. They always say, yeah, 1 year in crypto is like 4 years in
It
traditional
is, yeah. The grey
finance. So
hairs
yeah,
and
I'm like an old man now. So
But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the intro. Really appreciate it. And I guess that uh, we can pretty much start with the first question, actually. And Josh, how not strange it is, it's gonna be for you. Prepared a couple of questions in here, so I think they're all gonna be interesting and nerdy enough for our people to get interested, and as well as like not nerdy enough for them not to fall asleep. So let's start. Like, I want to start with like a sort of like a provocation, maybe. Like, most people in the space, like including a lot of like founders, like, they treat oracles as like a solved problem. Like, Chainlink exists. Like, there are like a handful of others. Like, it's like infrastructure. It's boring. Like, move on and stuff like that. Like, it's all for tech guys only and shit, right? So, Josh, make the case that it's not that simple, actually, right? I mean, what does the industry keep getting wrong about data infrastructure? I believe that's pretty good, especially for non-tech guys in here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yeah, it can kind of be, like a not so sexy topic sometimes when you're looking at like the infrastructure pieces. And it is highly important. Like, a lot of the hacks and attacks that we see today are still targeting, bad Oracle feeds, bad data, things like that. So it's something that is incredibly important. And then something that, of course, all the providers are looking to solve. I think the one thing we see today in regards to that is, we see, of course, teams using feeds that aren't so robust. And then also what we really haven't seen as of, surprisingly, as long as DeFi's been around, is we don't see a lot of teams using, say, like multiple Oracle feeds or multiple sources. So one thing that we like to do at DIA is, we aggregate a lot of different sources together so that, you have a robust price feed. And then if there is a price feed that's acting up, we utilize like a guardian system that will remove outliers, so that when you go to post the price on chain, you're removing malicious data. And then there's also a bunch of different sources that we're taking from, whether that's central exchange or decentralized exchange. But you also need to look at like the feeder network itself, right? Because you say, so you have like different vectors of attack. You could do like the source of the data. If there's only, say, like one source, you could attack like the liquidity pool. You can look at like the feeder network where the data is being fed. And in a lot of cases, you could look to, say, front run that data. You could, attack some of the validators. You could even attack at the wallet level and say, spam a bunch of data updates and then drain the wallet so that the wallet doesn't have sufficient funds to update the Oracle, right? So these are all things that we're considering and ensuring on the source level, that we're taking multiple sources, that the malicious data is being removed. And for us, we have like a lot of transparency with our Oracle stack. So we're one of the only Oracle providers that's, fully transparent end to end. So you can check like when this data is, where the data is originating from, when it goes to the sources, and when it gets posted on the update on the smart contract. So that removes, when you have that level of transparency, people can check into it. People can verify that the data is legitimate. So that's something that we're really pushing on our end. And then another thing we're doing is ensuring like, okay, teams are made aware when the gas wallets are running low. And if an event happens that it gets dangerously low, we'll actually go in and top up that wallet to ensure that the price feeds can continue to update. And then on the other side, like, yeah, I think most DeFi teams today should look at running multiple oracles if there isn't enough sources, for example. And that's where we work like really good in conjunction with like Chainlink, because you really want like multiple Oracle updates, because if something does happen, then there's a redundancy there. There's no redundancy, rather. With two oracles, there's a redundancy. If one goes down, then at least the other is updating there. So that's like the biggest thing I see personally on that topic. But yeah, it's when you talk infrastructure, and again with like the oracles, I think there's still like an information gap on where we are today and where we should be. And again, that's probably because like the infrastructure pieces maybe aren't like the most, you know, when things are running flawlessly, users don't typically have to worry about that stuff, right? And they shouldn't have to worry about it if the ecosystem is built properly enough, then there's going to be enough robustness that these attacks shouldn't happen. But that's a, you know, I don't know the exact number of relatable hacks that are go back to oracles, but it's probably close to 50%.
Wow.
Wow, that's a very big number actually. Like half of them basically. Oh, that's pretty impressive, I would say. And also, like, to the guys that think oracles are like not important or something, well, there's there is a chance to double think about it, right? So no, that's actually pretty cool. Thank you so much, Josh, for for that one, and bringing us I mean, at least myself as a non-tech guy, to that one. Not as if I disrespected that before. I mean, just in general, like, that was very cool to know for me, because a lot of things that people talk about, like, within infrastructure type things and stuff, like, for me, that basically, as for the guy that comes from more of a I wouldn't say like even TradFi level, but like classic business type type shit. It's just basically a lot of new words there all the time, and basically I would say a lot of new information. So thank you so much for that one. And let's go then. Chris, when, like, you were deep in building X1, like, when did Oracle infrastructure go, like, go from being a line item to something you had to genuinely think hard about? I think that's a pretty good one. Like, what was there, like, a specific moment, or like something close to that?
Yeah, good question. I would suggest yes, there was. And I think it's probably a pretty common founder pattern. You're so focused in the early stages of sort of the on-chain architecture itself, on throughput and fees, or on getting the developer tooling right, that data feels like something you'll plug in once the sort of foundation is set. And it's almost like the last mile problem. You've built the road and you'll figure out the traffic later. And the moment it shifted for us, I guess, is when we started getting serious about the DeFi stack, specifically when we were sort of scoping out EcoDex and the lending protocol, because the moment you start designing a lending protocol, you realize very quickly that every single risk parameter you're setting is a direct function of the price feed quality. So if you get that data wrong, even by a small percentage, or at the wrong moment, the consequences aren't a failed transaction. They're cascading liquidations, or even worse, someone gaming under an unsecured position because they know exactly when the feed is going to be stable. So it shifted really from a checkbox to a hard dependency pretty quickly for us, I would suggest.
Thank you so much for that answer. That was like pretty detailed as well. And like this happens on, like, established chains too, I think. So it's not just like a new chain problem. Josh, what is, like, the most common failure mode you've seen, like, when protocols don't take data infrastructure seriously enough, and how often is it still happening? Just curious to know.
Yeah, I mean, it's still happening all the time. I guess luckily I don't know if it's lucky, but the drift attack that happened yesterday wasn't an Oracle manipulation. So at least there's that. But yeah, I mean, it's something that anytime you can change the prices or fail to provide an update or attack that, as Chris mentioned, you can cause this cascade liquidation. So it's incredibly important to have robustness in anywhere where you're hosting any kind of total value locked. So whether that's going to be lending protocol, perp dex is very important. I think those are likely the most two cases. Dexes are usually okay because they're running kind of, there's no level of leverage there. Anytime you get into leverage, the price feeds are super important. Also, it can be relevant for things like liquid staking. stablecoins, anything where you're issuing like a derivative token that's utilizing the price of like an underlying asset. So if you're doing like, say, staked X1, you still need the price of the underlying asset to determine how much staked tokens should be mintable, right? Or how much what the value of the staked token amount is in circulation. So if there's, for example, an attack on that, that could result in, say, minting a bunch of extra tokens that could be sold on the market. So there's a lot of level of risk, honestly, with like price feeds, and so yeah, as mentioned, it's extremely important to ensure those feeds are robust and that people have the transparency there, and then they have the belief that the system is working in a way that they can trust their funds there, right? Because yeah, I mean, one of the, I guess, unfortunate things about DeFi right now is you're, say, depositing to a protocol, but you're taking 100% of the risk, right? If you deposit your 50,000 and you're earning, say, 6% yield, you're 100% of your funds are at risk, and if something does happen, there's kind of no turning back from that unless the protocol has insurance or has some method of getting those funds back. Like in a lot of cases, bridge funds can be frozen, Circle can help out with USDC, things like that. So there is a level of recovery in funds, but again, I think it's you shouldn't have to worry about that, right? You want to remove that factor from depositors and users and builders' minds that the infrastructure is done right and audits are there and hopefully everything goes well, and that's not something anyone needs to worry about.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also think so. Yeah, thank you so much for that response as well. And guys, let's get into like the, I would say, a specific challenge that X1 is facing right now, like, because I think it's very like illustrative. The new L1 approaching mainnet like doesn't have deep native liquidity, which is pretty much obvious, and it doesn't like have price history. It doesn't have an organic market that's been like running for 2 years, or something on the lines of that. Well, Josh, from DS side, like, how do you actually construct a reliable price feed for a chain in that situation, like for a brand new, basically, because you can't just like point at a deep order book that doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, and but luckily Dia's focused on that. And again, it's through sourcing data again directly from the sources, and then providing as many robust price feeds as we can. So we can scrape data directly from central exchanges and then also decentralized exchanges. So when the exchange on X1 goes live, we can set up a Docker container, which will scrape all the granular trade data from that DEX, and then we can use that as one of the sources of the price feed. Typically, we're only typically setting up a price feed for an asset if it meets like a minimum liquidity threshold, and that's to ensure that the price feed is robust enough that it can't be attacked. If you're providing a price feed on a token that's got 20K liquidity, someone can come in with a couple K, change the price, and then cause this issue. So yeah, as long as there's enough liquidity on the DEX, and then also different sources of liquidity as well, is going to be really helpful, right? Central exchange liquidity is usually pretty good because typically there's a level of market makers there that are helping to balance out the market. So we see strong strength in having, like a centralized exchange feed. And then the other thing, as I mentioned earlier, was like around the Guardian. So we'll take like CoinGecko or CoinMarketCap and use that as like a Guardian system to balance outliers. So say on CoinGecko, you have 7 different liquidity provisions for the token. That will be like the benchmark for our Oracle prices updating. So we'll say if it varies from 3% from CoinGecko, then we will look into that price and see is this something that should be posted or not based on the data that we're scraping directly. So there's different levels and different systems there to ensure stability. And then, of course, like more liquidity is always better, but being able to provide a price feed theoretically for any token that meets that liquidity threshold on a decentralized exchange is really powerful. And then if there's multiple decentralized exchanges, same thing. We can set up deck scrapers for all of those.
Thanks. Really appreciated that. And that's actually pretty interesting, as you said. Like, that even, like, sounds like, a hard job to do at some point. It's way easier to
Yeah,
do
our
it,
QC
with the queue
guy
that
has got
exists.
a lot of he's got a big job to do. So
Well, that's what they're paid for. But yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you so much. And because it, like, means that, the data infrastructure challenge, like, for a new chain, as I said, like, is fundamentally different from a mature one. Like, there is there is a question, like, Chris, knowing that, like, how did it shape, like, how you sequence, the build? Like, what did you prioritize, and when, as well?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the sequencing decision was actually one of the things I felt most strongly about in retrospect, because a lot of chains build the DeFi layer first and then try to sort of retrofit data infrastructure underneath it. And I think the answer is pretty straightforward. You can't really build credible DeFi without credible data. You can't attract serious builders to a lending protocol if they don't know where the price feeds are coming from and they can't audit them. So the grant wasn't charity. It was us saying, this is load-bearing infrastructure that actually needs to be in place before we open the doors, and not after. So yeah, something I felt pretty strongly about.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And yeah, also, like, Josh, from your side, like, what does it, like, a chain need to have in place for DIA to be able to deploy reliable feeds? Like, what are, like, the technical and structural requirements, I would say, that you're looking for, like, before you can commit?
right. I mean, we can get in pretty early. It's pretty simple for what we need. Obviously, like a stable network, wallets, things like that. Any kind of subgraph, RPCs, basically other infrastructure pieces. I'd say like RPCs is obviously the most important for us to in order to do what we need to do. But yeah, I mean that's we can get in pretty early on, and as Chris mentioned, it's interesting, right? Because you have two ways to do it, right? You could look to attract a bunch of DeFi and then add the infrastructure pieces, or you could add the infrastructure pieces first, build the groundwork, and then build on top of that with the DeFi primitives, which I think makes the most sense. There's a lot of chains out there today that are like, their user base is going, hey, like we'd like a lending protocol. And then it's like, well, we don't have any price feeds on chain. So we can't really go out with a robust lending protocol, and then they're scrambling to onboard, Oracle providers and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, it's we can get in pretty early, but it's I guess I would agree that it's important to onboard all the infrastructure pieces first to build a strong foundation, and then you build on top of that instead of having to go back and start building the infrastructure to support what's already being built on chain or what's already being asked by the user base on chain.
Got it. Thank you so much for the answer. And yeah, I believe that basically I was finished with that part of the questions. There is another one I would like to ask, which is basically, to kind of, like, stress test the, like, actual title of this space, which is called, like, data is the new gas. Because I don't want it, just to be a slogan or something, like data is the new gas, as I said already, right? Like, Chris, what does, that, framing actually mean to you? Let's actually redirect that question like that, and do you buy it as well?
Yeah, I do buy it. And I'll explain why. I guess, gas in the traditional sense is the mechanism that makes computation on chain possible and meaningful. Without it, basically nothing executes, and none of the things we've worked really hard on at X1 is making gas genuinely cheap and accessible. We're taking sub-cent gas transactions because our network is built on low-powered household nodes, not data centers. The energy cost is, really minimal, and that feeds directly into fee economics. But what data is the new gas is actually pointing at as the next layer of the same problem, really. Cheap computation is only really valuable if the inputs of the computation are actually trustworthy. A smart contract that executes perfectly on bad data hasn't really done anything useful. So it's just moved the funds in the wrong direction, very efficiently, should we say. So if the gas is the fuel of computation, data is the fuel for meaningful computation, and meaningful computation is ultimately the only kind that creates real value long term.
I like the answer. That's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, fuel for meaningful computation, especially. That's a good wording. I would say, Josh. And do you actually believe that that framing holds, like, economically? And is data infrastructure going to be valued and, like, priced the way based like layer of compute is, and, like, or does it always end up being treated as a commodity service that sits underneath and gets just taken as for granted?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, it's something that's super important, and it's a key proponent of, again, the having the strong data stack there is going to enable tons of use cases on chain, which aren't going to be possible without the strong data source. So it is in essence the gas. Especially because the Oracle updates are being pushed on chain and utilizing gas. So you could look at it multiple ways, that it's kind of a stepping stone to also increasing, transactions on the network. And there's also different data sources you could push on chain. We don't necessarily have to talk just, price updates. We could be looking at, many different facets, metadata, for example, and different factors along those. So, but again, it kind of boils down to, with the strong data on chain, you're going to enable different primitives that aren't going to be able to be utilized properly without that data layer. So we're talking again, lending protocols, perp dexes, CDPs, liquid staking. You could look at gaming, for instance. A lot of games, casinos, things like that might want to use like verifiable randomness. That's another layer of like data that can be on chain to support those kind of protocols. We're seeing things on chain like RWAs, a lot of interest on the TradeFi stuff. So all those are like price feeds that have to be updated on chain to enable these kinds of use cases. And so it kind of all does boil down to, again, these robust price feeds, and then ensuring that the infrastructure or the ground layer is set up in order to support the builders and things that users want to see on chain to promote activity or actually find some usefulness in bringing their funds there.
Thank you
Yeah,
for the
thanks.
answer. Yeah, that sounds pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
Chris.
I was just going to say, DARE is obviously open source and transparent about sourcing methodology, should I say, which is obviously a deliberate choice that runs against the grey of like how most data businesses work. But most data businesses are opaque by design because the data is kind of the moat. But I just wanted to ask you, Josh, why did DARE make the opposite bet, and does it actually work as a business model for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like, I mean, early on, we seen, even today, a lot of Oracle providers aren't providing that full end-to-end transparency. And we really see that as like a black box in the Oracle space. And DeFi today, crypto, blockchain, the whole premise, the whole idea behind it initially is, transparency, verifiability. So we wanted to stay on with that ethos and actually provide a service that, you know, users can actually see where the data is coming from. They can track it all the way from the trade data, source selection, through the nodes, through the cleansing process, through the bridging mechanism that we send the data to all the different chains and actually see it getting posted on chain. So for us, that was really important, and a core part of the upgrade that we did last year, where we tried to remove as much as the black box as we could on Oracle data. And yeah, I think definitely there's definitely a market for that. I mean, even a lot of oracles today are taking, as you mentioned, like aggregated trade data or trade data from like secondary sources. And what we really wanted to do is say, hey, look, we're going to go to the source, we're going to get the data directly, because that's important to remove any like externalities that there could be. If you're getting data from a third party, you don't know, once you've collected the data from there, you don't even know where the data is originated from. You can't determine the source of the data. So for us, that was really important to say, hey, if we really want to have transparency and verifiability in the Oracle space, we need to provide a system that we're doing this end to end. And through sourcing your own data, that's a key component.
Amazing, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds pretty good actually. And the next one I would say that I would like to jump into would be like, just to zoom out a little bit, because like, the most interesting part of the conversation for me is like, where it, goes beyond DeFi price feeds, I would say. Like, Chris, what does the data infrastructure, conversation look like when you're talking about like, health records, real world asset valuations, or payment transactions data rather than, crypto prices?
I would say it changes completely, and I think that's actually an unappreciated challenge in the industry right now. Most of the Oracle infrastructure that exists was built for a specific use case, financial price feeds for DeFi, and it's gotten pretty good at that. But the next wave of on-chain applications doesn't really want to know about ETH prices and what it's worth. It wants to know whether a particular property title is clean, for example. It wants to know whether a patient's health data has been verified and consented to. It wants to know whether a payment was actually settled in a traditional banking system before releasing a crypto equivalent, for example. And these are like fundamentally different data problems. The sourcing is obviously different. The verification is different. The latency requirements are different. And I guess the legal weight of the data is completely different as well. So a wrong price feed on a DEX costs people money. A wrong data feed in a health application has a different category of consequences entirely. So for X1, the reason we're building toward these use cases is that we genuinely believe the infrastructure for Web4, where real world data lives on chain and computation happens at the edge, requires a chain that is actually designed for low cost and high throughput from the start, not sort of retrofitted. But it also requires an Oracle layer, I think, that's flexible enough to handle data types that don't have established on-chain precedents yet. And that is a hard problem, and it doesn't have a clean solution today, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that one. And Josh, is TIA like, built for, that next category of data, I would say. And is that, where the Oracle industry as a, as a whole, is heading probably, or is it, still mostly a financial data story for, the foreseeable future?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a very exciting question. And yeah, I agree. So, we've seen kind of Oracle price feeds today be very much aligned with just updating on-chain prices, but we're obviously seeing a shift now in the industry with a lot of this Web2 partners coming on chain and seeing really, so like if we look at it and say like, what's the point, right? Why would we want to bring medical records on chain? And the answer there is, or like mortgage documentation, things like that. So It's really like like if you want to look at it at the ground level, it's like a cost thing. You can reduce your cost quite a bit, and then you can also reduce, for example, say the chance of attacks and like what's really being sent out through like so like say you send some medical docs on email. There's like lots of vectors there for attack, but on like with like the blockchain setup, you can say use something like a ZK proof, and you can verify the data without actually exposing any of the data to risk there. So like you have, for example, cheaper costs, you have better security, you have more transparency in the things that you need, maybe in the security or in the methodology that the company is setting up to in the systems that they have set up. So there's a lot of cool angles there. How we're positioning ourselves, and again, we are very aligned with this narrative, and we think that it's something that's going to be very prominent in the future. So there's a couple of different ways that we're facilitating that kind of like data or like the off-chain data. And the first is with like proof of reserves. So proof of reserves can verify the data of say off-chain assets, and then use that to update some price oracle on chain. So what that means is you could say go into so say one team we're working with, for example, they have some assets off chain. Maybe they're holding gold in a bank account or in a vault somewhere. The value of that gold obviously can't be read on chain, right? So what we can do is we can issue a proof of reserve there to say, okay, they have 13 ounces of gold in JP Morgan's account here, which is valued at, I don't know, $150,000. And then we can send that to the chain using ZK proof, ZK And what that basically says is, okay, we can't actually see the data in the JP Morgan account, or we can see the data, but we can post a ZK proof not exposing any of the data. So then that says, okay, we verified that this account has 150K based on the API key that they provided us that has full access to the account. We can see all that, but we're only exposing the price value with the ZK proof. We take that proof, we post it on chain and say, okay, 150K is in the account. Then the protocol can, for example, issue a derivative token based on the amount held on reserve and say, okay, we can issue $150,000 worth of the token. And then we have a one-to-one backing between what's held in reserve and what we've issued on chain. So I see that as like a very, very strong point of value where we can say, okay, the on-chain data or the on-chain smart contracts can't read the off-chain data, but we can feed data to those smart contracts using the ZK proof or proof of reserve with the ZK-TLS ZK proof to post that on chain to verify everything there. So that's like a super strong narrative to support those primitives. And then secondly, super quickly is on like the fundamental feeds. So that's where it gets exciting again for us is supporting these kind of derivative assets and pricing mechanisms in a different way that say we're not susceptible to these market risks or these liquidity provisions where someone can come in and do a flash loan, maliciously attack the oracle and extort the funds. So with a fundamental feed, we're actually pricing the asset directly from the derivative asset, directly from the collateralization ratio of the assets held in reserve. So that could be off-chain assets, that could be on-chain assets. Typically today, we're seeing, for example, like a lot of users depositing into these vaults and depositing with risk curators to earn higher yield. And typically what we're seeing with those providers is that they're requesting, the price feeds on their issued token or their vault token as being priced based on the underlying asset. So that could be Ethereum, that could be USDC. that kind of thing. And essentially what you're doing is you're taking the collateralization ratio. So you're saying, okay, as long as this is above 100% collateralization ratio, meaning that you actually have the funds to back the amount of tokens being issued, then we're safe, right? Typically, you want to see like somewhere between like 120 to 125%, because then you're over collateralized. The depositors are always covered. So in doing a fundamental feed, what you're doing is you're taking the value of the derivative token based on that ratio. So if the value of the vault falls below 100%, we can automatically adjust the price of the derivative token to match that. So what that allows, or what happens because of that, is it's essentially a way to price the market more efficiently, and it's a way to actually determine the value at that exact moment in time. So if you've been in the market for some time, you know, there was the UST, the Terra Luna hack back in the day, where, you know, there was some assets being held in reserve, but there was issues with liquidity on the UST token. So what was actually held in reserve was about 80% collateral, but it was held in a bunch of different tokens, Bitcoin on exchanges. There wasn't a lot of liquidity there that could be moved to support the price of the UST token. At the time, there was like a huge bank run. Everyone wanted to get their funds out ahead of everyone else. So they moved to remove their position and move to safer assets. That was because there wasn't a transparency. There was a transparency issue. People didn't know actually what was held in reserve. If Terra Luna had a fundamental feed, then users would have known, okay, we're at 80 cents right now because we're at an 80% collateralization ratio. Users might have still looked to move out because, you know, it's being under collateralized, right? But we wouldn't have seen like the crazy bank run that resulted in, you know, this crazy volatility in the token, because you could see at the time, for example, if there was a fundamental feed, actually how much was held in reserve. So going back to the original statement there, yeah, we're very much aligned with this new narrative, and, you know, think it's a extremely important primitive for opening up, for example, more use cases, whether that's providing so like if we want to look back to say like traditional DeFi and like where yield is generated from, we're now moving from like, say, almost like a fake yield, where like a lot of times in DeFi you see like by depositing to a pool you get some allocation of tokens, but that allocation of tokens is like, you know, network tokens or DeFi DEX tokens that they're providing to incentivize depositors, right? But by moving towards this new iteration of like DeFi, where we're bringing actual yield on chain using this data, right? Using this RWA data or fundamental feeds, we can actually provide real value to users, say through proof of reserve for like T-bills and things like that. So you can provide real yield to depositors and actually present that as verifiable, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we're unlocking like this whole DeFi use case, and it's a methodology, again, going back to data is gas. It's a way to facilitate the data so that we can bring real yield on chain. So I think that's really exciting.
Gotcha. Yeah, thank you so much. I believe that was probably the most detailed answer on a question that I've, you know, that I've heard in here. But no, that's actually pretty good, because like, you know, sometimes there is not enough, like, you know, clarity in the answers, like, you know, from people when I ask them something or something like that. So that's actually pretty good from that point. Also, I believe that guys were pretty much you know, over with you know, with the questions that, you know, I've prepared. So basically, I believe it's time to jump to, you know, the most, you know, I would say the most interesting part, which is usually, you know, the community questions from the dearest and, you know, loveliest community. So Chris, I believe they're all going to be to you. No, not actually. No, there are four. There are more questions.
I've talked enough, so Chris can take it. Yeah.
There's gonna be on the Oracle side as well. Yeah, I just haven't seen. Wow, there's a lot of interesting. There's 4 questions from our dearest community, so let's go and ask them all. So, the first question is, yeah, anyway, to you, Chris. So, what strategic goals will X1 Echo Chain pursue over the next 1 to 3 years? Which is, yeah, pretty interesting question, actually.
Yeah, that is a good question. I guess our focus is quite simple. Scale the network, grow the ecosystem, and drive real world adoption. First on infrastructure, we're obviously rolling out X1 nodes globally to build that truly distributed low energy layer one. Not just decentralized in theory, but in physical footprint. And that means more validators, stronger performance, and consistently low fees. Um, Secondly, obviously ecosystem growth, where we're making X1 one of the easiest chains to build on. This includes expanding our developer tooling, funding builders through our grant programs, and growing across key areas like DeFi, AI, and consumer applications. Thirdly, liquidity and usage, where we're focused on driving real activity on chain. That means exchange listings, DeFi primitives, and ensuring assets and users can move seamlessly across our ecosystem. And then finally, real world integration. We're pushing beyond crypto native use cases into payments, into real world assets, and sort of practical applications, which we've also almost touched on earlier on, that bring everyday users on chain. So it could be Web2 users, things like healthcare, traditional banking, etc. But I guess in short, to summarize, we're building a scalable, energy efficient layer one that people can actually use, and it's not just another chain with potential.
Got it. That sounds like a good plan. Well, the next one is also to you, Chris. Will X1 EcoChain explore partnerships with prediction market platforms? Oh, that's a very interesting one. Or do you view this area as a passing trend?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they're just a passing trend. Obviously, they are a powerful on-chain primitive, but they do need to be approached in the right way, I would say. For us, it's not about just chasing every narrative. It's about whether something adds value to the ecosystem. So, for example, prediction markets, can work well on X1 because we've got low fees and fast finality, which enable high frequency, low cost participation. And that's something that many other chains are struggling with at the moment. So, yes, we are open to partnerships in that space if they can bring liquidity, obviously engagement and that long term usage. However, I wouldn't say they are a core pillar of our strategy to date. So our focus remains really building strong fundamentals across infrastructure, DeFi, and real world adoption. And prediction market sits kind of alongside that as an optional high side, upside vertical, but not the foundation, should we say. So, bottom line is we will support it, we will explore it, but we will stay disciplined in what actually drives sustainable growth.
Gotcha. That's pretty mindful, I would say. And yeah, Josh, the next 2 questions are for you. The first one, how could DS Oracle technology shape the future of decentralized prediction markets? Prediction markets are really bothering people. Or they're just like fascinated by them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's tough, right? We're kind of the data layer, but we don't have like the, I guess you could call it the execution layer for facilitating some of these markets. So we've been scoping with a team called like Gen Layer, where they have the resolution layer for the prediction markets, and then we can act as like the relayer or pass the information between the two networks. So our idea there was, for example, a prediction market that wants to be able to open and close markets without any intermediaries, like we see today with Polymarket. They like whitelist markets. So with our theory or idea there, you can pass a user can look to create a market. We'll pass that information along to Gen layer or any kind of resolution layer. They'll choose like the AI that looks at the data on like X or routers or whatever sources, depending on the question or the market that wants to be set up by the user. And then when that market goes to resolve, again, the answer from the AI from the resolution layer will be passed through DIA's feeder nodes back to the network smart contract. And that way you can allow, for example, markets to open and close again without any intermediaries. So that's where we kind of come in as like the data passing layer or feeder network or feeder node setup, between basically bridging between the smart contracts on chain and the AI attestation layer on the other side.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for the answer. And the last question is also to you, Josh. With AI being widely fucking hell, there's the prediction markets, AI. There's a lot of trendy topics. Trendy topics actually. But
All the hot narratives.
Exactly, the hottest narratives. Well, so, with the AI being widely discussed in Web3, does DIA see a clear path for integrating AI into its ecosystem to provide sustainable long-term benefits, or is it something you view, cautiously due to hype or uncertain? Oh, sorry, and uncertainty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I guess there's two different angles here. First would be actually integrating AI into DIA and into the price feeds and into security and robustness. I don't know how much we've explored that. Again, anytime you're using a system that's got, I guess, its own mind, you're introducing another vector of risk there. I haven't heard of any teams actually utilizing AI on the Oracle side for, say, scraping data, maybe using it to remove outliers, things like that. I think it could be interesting, but it's not something that we've delved too deep into. Now, on the other side of things, say providing data to AIs for facilitating transactions, I think that's really cool. And one thing that, I think we'll see moving forward is like AIs doing on-chain transactions or running their own vaults or, doing arbitrage, things like that. And they're going to need strong data sources for that. So DIA is very much aligned for providing data to those AI units or AI agents. And so I think that side is exciting.
Yeah, also think so. So I think that we're pretty much over with all of the questions, all of the answers, and basically all of the all the information flow. In the evening for me, I believe for Chris, it's gonna be early evening, right? Like it's 6 p.m. right?
Nearly 6. Yeah, I'm nearly 6.
Nearly
Dinner
6.
time.
Dinner time. Yeah, Josh. What is the time for you? Morning, right?
It's about 11, so about breakfast time, I guess, or
Well,
late breakfast.
then yeah, then I believe we're gonna be wrapping that all up for Chris to have dinner and for you, Josh, to have
No, I'm
breakfast.
kidding.
It's a lot different than our last one where I was where we started at 2 a.m.
Yeah, that was
Sorry for that
crazy.
one again. Sorry,
It
just
was
like yeah,
still a great chat,
very
so
hard
no
to
worries
adapt.
there.
Absolutely. Well, just want to say thank you so much, yeah, Chris, for for being here on the EchoChain side. Josh, thank you so much for being here from the DIA Oracle side. It was an amazing AMA. I wouldn't even say it's like not like it's an AMA slash podcast already, the first time for Exxon EchoChain, and that's pretty good actually. Thank you so much, guys, for being in here. Thank you so much for our community, as well as guys. Feel free to follow DIA Oracles on Twitter as well. Amazing guys. They just rebranded, the visual aspects of theirs, so it looks pretty cool. Feel free to go and check it out. So yeah, any closing words, Josh? Let's start with you. Any closing words?
No, thanks very much for having me here, and excited again for the X1 Eco Chain and how we can continue to support. And again, if you're a builder or looking to build on X1 Eco Chain, we're definitely happy to help how we can. And maybe I'll just iterate very shortly on that. Like on X1 Eco Chain, any custom Oracle requirement is going to be completely free to set up. We're on chain as a common good. So if a or if any team at all needs an Oracle price feed set up, we can come in and set that up and get that done for you guys. Custom Oracle contract, no cost for you on X1 EcoChain. So definitely reach out if you're looking to build, and we'll help support you on that front.
Amazing. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, firstly, thank you to everyone for joining. This is a first of this sort of more podcast style on camera spaces, AMAs, should we say. So thank you. And again, thanks to Josh and George. But I guess I'd like to leave people with this. A chain's value proposition at launch isn't usually told in performance metrics, transactions per second, fees, compatibility. And they do matter, but the more interesting question is, what does the chain look like to a developer on day one of mainnet? What can they actually build? What infrastructure is already in place? What hard problems are already being solved? And X1 EcoChain goes to mainnet with day live, with a full DeFi stack ready to deploy on, with grant infrastructure. That means the first wave of builders aren't starting from scratch. That isn't an accident. It's the result of deliberately sequencing the build so that the infrastructure arrives before the applications and not after. And I think that's the thing that really separates chains that develop real ecosystems from chains that have impressive launch weeks and then go quiet 6 months later. So we're building for the long arc, and the data infrastructure being in place from day one is a big part of that and what that arc looks like. But again, thanks to everyone joining. Hope this is well received, and we will look to do more of these in the future.
Sounds pretty good. So yeah, bye to everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care,
guys.
Have a great day.